Very much, Provincial Chair, the Provincial Secretary, and all the officials who are here today. And let me thank the delegates from all regions and branches of the EFF. Let me salute members of the media who are here and for their patience as well, because we started a bit late. We are not going to waste a lot of time today, especially from my side, because we are going to speak to you on the 13th of December at the National People's Assembly. Commissar's leadership of the province, which is here with us today, and delegates to the Third National People's Assembly, I greet you all today in the name of economic freedom in our lifetime. We have gathered you here today to conduct a dry run for our National People's Assembly and to determine whether indeed the delegates which have been elected in the branch People's Assemblies and branch General Assemblies are people we can touch and feel and are people we can see. Each and every one of you hold a massive responsibility as you have been entrusted with a mandate by your branches who represent communities at a ward-based level to advance the challenges, needs, and aspirations of the people who reside where you come from. Fighters, as you are seated here today, you have a duty to be responsible with the power that has been delegated to you by the branches. As you are seated in this Provincial General Assembly, you have the responsibility to be disciplined and participate in the discussions around the discussion documents and the plan of action for the EFF in your province over the next 5 years. As a delegate of the EFF, you have a duty to reflect on the leadership question. And in your reflection, you must be incorruptible. It is your responsibility as a delegate to defend the movement from foreign tendencies, such as the use of money for the leadership contest and influence of external forces in the National People's Assembly of the EFF. Delegates, you are the shield that will protect the integrity of the EFF and defend the people's movement from infiltration. It is you who must tell us of the misuse of organizational resources to pursue a selfish, narrow, and factional interest. It is you who must guard against quarantine of delegates in places which are not approved by the EFF, and the use of transport that does not belong to the EFF to transport you as delegates. Fighters, you must not allow the power that you hold on behalf of the people to be purchased by individuals who are seeking election and or who are promoting anarchy in the National People's Assembly. Your primary responsibility is that you must maintain the discipline of the movement. Delegates, we take this opportunity to remind you that the following will constitute a wrongful lobbying practices: raising and using funds and other resources to campaign for elections, distributing money to EFF members and structures as part of a campaign for leadership election, production of T-shirts, posters, and other paraphernalia to promote a particular list of candidates, promising positions or other incentives or threatening to withhold such as a means of gaining support, using the media to promote a particular list of candidates and to spread malicious rumors, falsehoods, or allegations against those with whom you disagree, leaking confidential information to the media, secret interaction with journalists with the intention to get them to write stories on internal organizational issues and communicating internal decisions, or processes to the media without due authorization. Negative campaigning which relate to the attacks of the integrity of other comrades both within the structures of the movement and in other forums. Suppressing honest and legitimate debate about the caliber of candidate in formal meetings of the movement. Allowing structures or individuals to condone violation of constitutional provisions and or regulations and or failing to report such violations when they occur. Using the offices, resources, and staff of the EFF or any state institution or company as a machinery to promote a particular list of candidates. Using violence, intimidation, threats to coerce and force those who hold a different view. Setting up structures outside organization to promote or lobby for a particular candidate. Convening meetings to discuss leadership issues under the false pretext that they are organized constitutional structures. Production and distribution of documents and pamphlets not approved by structures of the organization will not be allowed. You cannot use social media such as Facebook, WhatsApp and WhatsApp groups or Twitter to negatively attack others. EFF members nominated for leadership positions in the CCT must actively and vehemently discourage anyone from using their names to campaign for leadership position. If you keep quiet when your name is used to divide and undermine the integrity of our organization, your name shall be disqualified from contesting for any position in the organization. When people do wrong things in your name, you must be able to stand up and say, "Not in my name." No EFF from the CCT or PCT is permitted to create the perception that their lobbying is a decision of the upper structures. Structures and members of organization have a right to raise their views. No one must come and impose a list and say democratic centralism says this is what we must do. Now is the time for branches to speak and not the upper structures. Lobbying shall stop once the process of electing the new CCT has been concluded at the Third National People's Assembly. Once the new CCT is elected, it becomes the duty of all EFF members to unite and rally behind the newly elected leadership, regardless of the preference the delegates had before the elections. We urge you to remain loyal only to the National People's Assembly guidelines, the Constitution of the EFF, the Code of Revolutionary Discipline, and the EFF Founding Manifesto. Do not be loyal to the Code of Conduct and Constitution of the faction, because you will have to choose between the Constitution of the faction and the Constitution of the EFF. And the EFF Constitution will always win over individuals. If anyone tries to make you conduct yourself outside of these revolutionary documents, then it is your revolutionary responsibility to report such individuals. A delegate of the EFF is not silent in the face of corruption. A delegate of the EFF does not look away when they sense the movement is about to be compromised or be put in a disrepute. Fellow fighters, as a delegate of the EFF, you are expected to be loyal to our Constitution. And our Constitution demands of us in Section 6, subsection 7b, loyalty means that at all times, members and leaders will not keep quiet when the organization is unfairly criticized and attacked in private and in public. Loyalty to the organization means that members will remain active members even when removed from positions of responsibility or deployments. Loyalty means that members of the organization will not join in the opposition and opponent forces who unfairly criticize the organization and its leadership. It is for this reason that you as delegate must be vigilant and loyal and never allow enemy forces to coerce you into unfairly criticize the organization or its leadership. Delegates, this means that when the organization or its leaders are unfairly attacked in public or in private, it is your duty to stand up and defend the revolution, because this movement and its leadership are the custodian of the revolution. Fighters, the fact that we are heading to the Third National People's Assembly does not mean that we no longer have leadership, that anarchy must prevail. Until the Electoral Committee dissolves the Central Command team at the National People's Assembly, this organization remains led, and this leadership will guide you throughout this process alongside your provincial leaders. Fighters, when we say that you must not unfairly criticize the leadership, we are not saying do not engage in constructive criticism, because our Constitution allows this. Section 6, subsection 5 of the Constitution speaks to constructive criticism and self-criticism, and it reads as follows. From time to time, members and structures of the EFF should engage in constructive criticism and self-criticism, meaning they should openly, honestly review the work they do and avoid all forms of boastfulness and self-glorification over minor achievements. The People's Assembly, CCT, PCT, RCT, BCT, deployed cadres and members should periodically review the work they are doing against their own set targets. They should always ask whether they have taken the correct decisions, whether they have achieved what they intended to achieve within the time periods they decided upon. Fellow fighters, none of you must therefore feel like you are censored from reflecting and engaging in constructive criticism. Because when you are critiquing this organization, you are critiquing yourself, because you are the organization. The discussion documents of the Third National People's Assembly are part and parcel of this collective constructive criticism and self-criticism, especially in the organizational character and design document. And it is this discussion document, amongst many others, which should inform your discussions here today. There are many critical questions which you must reflect on, such as the reorganization of regional structures into sub-regional structures. We must ask ourselves a question without being factional as to whether regional structures are relevant or not. What is the immediate role of the regional structures? Can this role not be played by sub-regional structures? Because when we choose a sub-region, it means we choose a person from amongst ourselves, a person who knows our dynamics, a person who lives our struggles, and is not a stranger who wins a position of a regional chairperson, even when he's not known for working the ground, but because he's got the means to lobby others and become a regional leader. Fighters, we need to discuss whether we have not reached a point where we must establish the youth command and collapse the student command into a youth command, because students are members of the community before they are students. They have to belong to one organization with the unemployed youth and with the urban and rural and township youth. All of us, we are allowed to speak about those issues. We are allowed to speak whether we should increase the membership target from 100 to 200, or we should maintain it at 100. Because our responsibility is to win elections. How does having 100 members translate into winning even a voting district? These discussion documents ought to be the bedrock of our discussion, because you cannot discuss leadership question before you discuss the mandate these leaders must carry out. There must be a term of reference of what these leaders will be leading, so that they know what is expected of them before they accept the responsibility of leadership. Let us exhibit the highest form of discipline, fellow fighters, and in doing so, not shy away from reflecting on the recent occurrences within our movement and within society in general. The National People's Assembly is important because it is our commitment to internal democracy, a principle which we must never compromise, because it is Leninism to allow all party members to engage on the tactical questions and planning of the movement and to engage on the election of party leadership. It does not matter whether democracy goes in our favor or not, but our commitment should be to democracy. Be honest in your discussions and revolutionary in your approach, and avoid at all times the temptation to fall into the traps of liberalism. In closing, I want to share with you the key principles to avoid an organizational decay and to avoid allowing liberal tendencies to inspire you as delegates of the EFF. And these are the 11 points on combating liberalism as developed by Mao Zedong of China. Liberalism fighters manifest itself in the following ways, and we must always strive to avoid practicing it. To let things slide for the sake of peace and friendship when a person has clearly gone wrong. This means that when a person is your friend, even when they are doing wrong, you allow them to do wrong because you want peace. And refrain from principal argument because it's an old acquaintance, a fellow townsman, a schoolmate, a close friend, a loved one, an old colleague, or old subordinate. You cannot keep quiet in the organization even when the wrong is done by your wife or the husband who's a fellow member. A wrong is wrong even when committed by the loved one. Or to touch on the matter lightly instead of going into it thoroughly, so as to keep on good terms. The result is that both the organization and the individuals you are protecting are going to be harmed. To indulge in irresponsible criticism in private instead of actively putting forward one suggestion to the organization. At the corners, you speak very bad about the organization. In private, you speak very bad about the organization. In private houses and functions where we are not present, you speak very bad of the organization. To say nothing to people, to their faces, but to gossip behind their backs, or to say nothing at a meeting, but to gossip afterwards. To show no regard at all for the principle of collective life, but to follow one's own inclination. This is a second type of unacceptable tendency. To let things drift if they do not affect one personally. So if you are not personally affected, you just allow things to pass, yet you say you love the organization. To say as little as possible while knowing perfectly well what is wrong. To be wordly wise. Wordly wise means you speak in tongues and not very clear where you stand, because you play safe and seek only to avoid a blame. Never avoid a blame. Take a position. Not to obey orders, but to give pride of place to one's own opinions. When the leadership says to you, this is the direction we are taking, even after a thorough debate, because you think your own individual opinion is superior to that collective wisdom, you disobey the collective wisdom. To demand special consideration from the organization, but to reject its discipline. To indulge in personal attacks, big quarrels, vent personal spite, or seek revenge instead of entering into an argument and struggling against incorrect views for the sake of unity or progress or getting the work done properly. To hear incorrect views without rebutting them, and even to hear counter-revolutionary remarks without reporting them, but instead to take them calmly as nothing had happened. You sit with people in their rooms, in your own houses, in the suburban areas, and they tell you they are going to leave the EFF, and you don't report that counter-revolutionary remarks to the leadership of the EFF and want to be regarded as one of our own. To be among the masses and fail to conduct propaganda and agitation or speak at a meeting or conduct investigation and inquire amongst them, and instead to be indifferent to them and show no concern for their well-being, forgetting that one is a communist and behaving as if one were an ordinary non-communist. It's a reactionary view. To see someone harming the interest of the masses and yet not feel any problem or dissuade or stop him or reason with him, but allow him to continue doing wrong to the community. To work half-heartedly without definite plan or direction. To work perfectionary and muddle along. So long as one remains a monk, one goes tolling the bell. This is a ninth type of a tendency that is unacceptable. To regard oneself as having rendered great service to the revolution. To pride oneself on being a veteran. To disdain minor assignments while being quite unequivocal to major tasks. To be slipshod in work and slack in study. When we say to you, you must go to school, and you refuse to go to school and yet regard yourself as a revolutionary can never hate education. There is no need to remind us that you are a veteran of the EFF. There is no need to remind us that you started with the EFF in 2013. Your own performance and conduct in the organization will speak for you. You are speaking about it and overemphasizing it because you want to impose yourself on us. To be aware of one's own mistakes and yet make no attempt to correct them. Taking a liberal attitude towards oneself. As Marxists and Leninists and as students of Fanon, let us engage frankly and remain revolutionary and avoid liberalism at all costs. Fighters, the time is now to take a stand. You cannot be neutral at a point when your organization needs you the most. The time is now to stand up and say, not in our names. The time is now that no old man with no track record of doing good to black people can claim that he can unite black people. Only the EFF has demonstrated that it has got capacity to unite black people. Only the EFF has got a track record of 11 years of unbroken struggle, fighting for the interest of the black people in South Africa. No organization, older or young, can claim the achievements that the EFF has made in 11 years. Because this EFF, from its inception, it has never been ashamed to be associated with black people and Africans in particular. Fighters, show me any organization that brought together in the past 11 years, that brought together almost 120,000 black people under one roof, speaking one language, determining their own destination together. No any other organization has ever done that except the EFF. What nonsensical unity are they talking about? What unity of Africans are you talking about when you have had almost 82 years to unite Africans? No organization in South Africa, in Africa, and in the diaspora can claim to unite Africans, because it is only EFF that can be found in Zimbabwe, in Mozambique, in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Liberia, in the whole of African continent. Because the true unity of African people lies with the unity of the EFF, The unity of Africa depends on the unity of the EFF. The liberation of black people in South Africa depends on the unity of the EFF. Defend the unity of the EFF is the only one that can unify the whole of black nation all over South Africa, all over Africa, and in the diaspora. I thank you.
Shaya ingoma. Shaya ingoma, shaya ingoma. Hey, Mura.